Good morning, everybody. I'm Loretta Byrne, the Program Manager of ResearchMatch. Welcome and thank you for attending today's webcast, What Researchers Should Know About Gastroparesis, a Patient's Perspective, which is offered in collaboration with our featured presenter, Melissa Adams Van Houten, who's the Public Policy and Outreach Director of the Association of Gastromotility Disorders. The information and statements expressed on this webinar are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, and viewers should seek their own professional counsel for any medical condition and before altering an existing care plan. So ResearchMatch is funded by the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, in order to advance medical and behavioral health research. The map on the right hand side of this screen displays all of the 155,000 ResearchMatch volunteers from across the United States, including Puerto Rico. And as a community of people who are willing to learn about research, you're at the heart of making research discoveries possible. By joining ResearchMatch and taking part in research studies, you're making an impact because you help researchers generate new knowledge. The map on the right shows all of the research centers that are part of ResearchMatch. And that's where our researchers come from. And they're research centers like the Cleveland Clinic, Brigham and Women, Mayo Clinic. And these researchers want to find people like you to help them finish their studies. ResearchMatch is not just about one institution, one partner, or one research study about one health condition. Instead, we're funded by the NIH because we're an organization of many groups. We're a collaborative effort, and we're working together to improve the advancement of science so that we can have new findings and new medicines and new treatments that will improve the health and well-being of all of us in the future. And we do this by collaborating with organizations like the AGMD, the Association of Gastromotility Disorders, and you, our volunteers, who are the most important part, and the research teams. And today, this webinar is put together because it's Gastroparesis Awareness Month, and there are actually 720 volunteers in ResearchMatch that suffer from this disorder. And we're here today to hear from other people living with gastroparesis and to seek ways to improve patient and participant engagement. So it is my pleasure to introduce Melissa Adams Van Houten. Melissa Adams Van Houten is a wife, mother, and former university political science instructor and corporate trainer, and she holds a BS in political science from St. Joseph's College and an MA in political science from Indiana State University. And after being diagnosed with gastroparesis in February of 2014, she became a passionate advocate for those in her community who feel voiceless and ignored. She currently serves as the association's public policy and outreach director, but she's also co-authored a book called Real Life Diaries, Living with Gastroparesis. And she also manages several online patient support and advocacy groups, and the largest of which serves nearly 3,700 people. She spends her days advancing the cause of those who struggle with the sometimes devastating and life-altering effects of gastroparesis. And it's her fondest desire to empower those people to advocate for others and to advocate for awareness and better treatments and ultimately cures. And we're also joined today by the founder of the association, Mariangela DeGrazia de Tucci. Mariangela is a very special person who I've had the pleasure to meet a few times. She became ill with chronic idiopathic intestinal pseudo-obstruction, which is CIPO, in 1979. And over the years, her illness progressed to include other disorders and her entire digestive tract. Along with CIPO, she has gastroparesis, diffuse esophageal spasm, achalasia, dysphagia, GERD, esophagitis, malabsorption, bacterial overgrowth, and pernicious anemia. And her GI disorders have gone on to create other problems and affect multiple systems of her body. Mariangela was humbled and honored, she tells us, to have been the founder of the Association of Gastrointestinal Motility Disorders. And she did that in 1991. She's also a writer for many of the organization's publications. She's written and published numerous articles and poems on the topic concerning gastroparesis and other motility disorders. And she's been the invited guest speaker on several venues. And so it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce Melissa Adams Van Houten. Thank you for coming today, Melissa.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank ResearchMatch for hosting today's webinar and for providing me with the opportunity to speak. My focus is on gastroparesis all year long, of course, but I am especially thankful to be able to highlight August as Gastroparesis Awareness Month and share a little bit of information about the illness that I live with. So today I would like to talk a little bit about the basics of gastroparesis, what it is, its symptoms, its causes, its possible complications, how it's diagnosed, and some of the available treatments. But what I'd mostly like to do today is share how this illness impacts the lives of those who have been diagnosed and what we as patients would like researchers to understand about this little known but deeply impactful illness. So next slide, please. Sorry. So the basics of gastroparesis. Gastroparesis, or GP as most patients refer to it, literally means paralysis of the stomach. It is a digestive motility disorder in which the stomach muscles that are controlled by the vagus nerve fail to contract and move food through from the stomach to the intestines at the proper rate. It is a delayed stomach emptying. Those symptoms and symptom intensity can vary widely from person to person. Gastroparesis is generally marked by symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, GERD or acid reflux, feeling full after only a few bites, bloating, distension, and sometimes excruciating stomach and abdominal pain, which happens to be my main and most burdensome symptom. And just a note about the symptoms here, kind of interesting thing that we do in the groups, we sometimes conduct these non-scientific but useful surveys in our online groups. And one recent survey that we conducted highlighted what our members find to be their most bothersome symptoms. We had a total of 534 respondents. Nearly 95% of them indicated that they experience abdominal pain always, usually, or sometimes. 95% always, usually, or sometimes experienced bloating and distension. 91% always, usually, or sometimes experienced nausea. And nearly 72% always, usually, or sometimes experienced vomiting. And beyond those main symptoms, the next most common cited symptom was fatigue, chronic fatigue, and that was cited by nearly 95% of respondents. In addition to the daily symptoms gastroparesis can cause, it sometimes also leads to debilitating or even life-threatening complications, such as extreme weight loss or weight fluctuations. And I do say fluctuations because though many in our community do lose weight with gastroparesis, by some estimates, 30 to 40% of patients actually gain weight. And a lot of them go through spells where they will lose, gain, and then lose again. So it's really not just weight loss, but weight fluctuations that can be a complication. In addition to that, dangerously erratic blood sugars, chronic fatigue, esophageal damage from the acid reflux or the vomiting, blockages of the digestive tract or BSORs, dehydration, and malnutrition, which is really caused by not just the vomiting, but the inability to intake the proper nutrients. And another point I'd like to make here, it's not really listed on the complications there, but we see a lot of this, and that is the mental health issues associated with gastroparesis. And I'm not sure, I can speculate on all the whys of this, but I can tell you that the physical symptoms of gastroparesis can be very difficult to bear. They are life-limiting, and this can be a very socially isolating illness, and that makes it difficult to cope. I think that the mental health issues have been pretty well documented, but again, in one of our informal surveys in the group, we had 784 respondents, and they indicated 81% of them indicated that they had been officially diagnosed with a mental health condition, and another 6% believed they have one, even though they hadn't been officially diagnosed. Anxiety and depression were the most common conditions cited, 77% with anxiety, 75% with depression. And that was followed by PTSD, cited by 40% of respondents. Next slide, please. Gastroparesis is generally diagnosed by something called a gastric emptying study or scintigraphy. We refer to it as a GES. And that is a procedure where a small amount of radioactive material is traced through the digestive tract to determine the rate at which the food travels from the stomach into the intestines. With this test, the patient will eat a small meal, generally consisting of scrambled eggs, toast and jelly, and a glass of water. And this food is laced with trace amounts of radioactive material. And then the images are taken at regular intervals over ideally a period of about 4 hours to see how quickly the meal empties itself from the stomach. This isn't really a complicated test, but for those of us who actually have symptoms of gastroparesis, it can be difficult because we are being asked to consume a meal, and that's the very thing that causes our symptoms. So that can be a challenging test for some of us. Other methods of diagnosis include breath tests and wireless motility capsules called the smart pill, which when swallowed, it also transmits data regarding the rate of passage through the digestive tract. But the GES is the most common form of testing. And even though it has its issues, it is still considered the gold standard for diagnosis. A patient will generally undergo many other tests, such as an upper endoscopy, a colonoscopy, maybe a manometry to rule out other issues as well. As for the causes of gastroparesis, the most common known cause of gastroparesis is diabetes, and that accounts for about 1/3 of the cases. Other known causes include neurological disorders like multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease, connective tissue disorders such as EDS, Ehlers-Danlos, complications resulting from surgeries, various medications such as narcotics, direct damage to the vagus nerve, which is, again, the nerve that controls the stomach muscles, and post-viral gastroparesis. Most cases of gastroparesis, however, are labeled idiopathic, meaning there is no known or identifiable cause. So for those of us who are idiopathic, we do not even get to know the cause of this illness that has turned our life upside down. In the same survey of our group that I mentioned earlier, when asked the cause of their gastroparesis, about 56% of respondents indicated they were idiopathic, 13% cited diabetes as the cause, 11% cited post-surgical gastroparesis, and 5% cited EDS or Ehlers-Danlos as the cause. Strictly by the numbers, gastroparesis is not actually considered to be a rare disease. A rare disease is technically defined as one that affects fewer than 200,000 people. But with gastroparesis, as with everything else with gastroparesis, it's not quite that simple. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, estimates that 5 million or more people in the United States live with gastroparesis. So we would not technically be a rare disease. But a quick internet search will reveal that there's estimates out there that range from a few 100,000 of us to about 14 million of us, depending on which source you're looking at. And I think part of the confusion lies in the fact that we are frequently misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed, and the actual prevalence is probably far greater than the number of actual positively diagnosed cases. Many patients wait months or even years for proper diagnosis because gastroparesis is not widely recognized, even sometimes in the medical world. And its symptoms do tend to overlap with those of a lot of other gastrointestinal disorders like IBS and functional dyspepsia. So it makes it a little bit difficult to diagnose. So despite our numbers, we remain largely invisible, and we are generally considered an orphan disease. We are not strictly rare, and we're not common or well known. So research funding for gastroparesis has been somewhat limited, and consequently that is reflected in our less than ideal treatment options. Next slide, please. To put it bluntly, there are no consistently safe, reliable, and effective treatments, and there is no scientifically known cure for gastroparesis. In general, patients struggle with maintaining nutrition levels, and their risk of malnutrition and dehydration due to their poor caloric intake and their inability to ingest and absorb the proper nutrients. Treatments tend to focus on symptom control and may gradually progress to greater levels of intervention based on how well or how poorly one responds to each step in this treatment plan. Treatments might include dietary changes, medications, alternative therapies, tube feedings or TPN, and the gastric stimulator or other surgeries. A patient would typically start out with dietary changes, and these are actually pretty radical changes. The basic GP diet calls for small, frequent, low-fat, low-fiber foods and liquids, which are considered easier to digest. Many diet plans will call for a 3-step process where you would start out with a liquids-only diet, and then if you did well with that, you gradually work your way up to some soft foods, and then eventually, hopefully, a maintenance diet where you would add just a little bit more fat, a little more solid food, still well cooked and very easy to digest foods, but that's the plan to move up that diet plan. That's the plan. But in reality, many people find that basic diet pretty difficult to follow. It's largely a process of trial and error. And some people find that even though they follow that plan precisely, they can't really find a lot of foods that work for them. Sometimes they'll try a food and it will work for them one day and it won't work the next day. So it's constantly changing what you can tolerate and what you can't. Some people find that they get stuck on one step of that diet plan, or that they move up and down those steps in the diet plan rather than steadily progressing through the diet. Others find that even though they follow the plan precisely, they really have little or no tolerance for most of the recommended foods, and they cannot maintain adequate hydration and nutrition levels. When that's the case, medications such as prokinetics like Reglan and domperidone, and antiemetics like Zofran and Phenergan may be helpful, and that is what most of us turn to. But some of us find that even those don't really offer adequate symptom control. And when that's the case, well, we sometimes seek out alternative treatments like acupuncture, or we resort to methods which provide supplemental nutrition like feeding tubes and TPN. And sometimes we look to surgical interventions such as the gastric stimulator or pyloroplasty. GPOM is another form of that, a more recent form for relief. It can be a very difficult illness to manage. And for some of us, even when we have tried all the available treatments, we experience little or no relief from the symptoms. Next slide, please. That's sort of the brief, technical, sterile overview of gastroparesis. And though I think it is important to get the facts out there, the information out, most gastroparesis patients will tell you that that does not really paint an adequate picture of what GP is or how it impacts our lives. And that's kind of what I'm here to do today to tell you what it's like to live with gastroparesis on a daily basis and describe the impact it has on really every single aspect of our lives. And I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about my personal story, a brief version. In February of 2014, my life changed in ways that I could not have imagined. Overnight, I went to bed healthy, able to eat pretty much anything I wanted, and I woke up the next morning to nonstop vomiting and excruciating, knock me to the floor, stomach and abdominal pain. After several hours of this, with no apparent cause, no relief in sight, I was weak and I was frightened, and I made the decision to go to the ER, which is something I never ever do. From there, I was admitted to the hospital where I was forced to undergo what I think must be every test known to man, including a GES and one particularly awful test where they forced a tube down my nose and into my stomach. After about a week of this testing, on February 14th, which was not such a pleasant Valentine's Day for me, I was diagnosed with gastroparesis, a word I had never even heard. I consider myself fortunate to have been diagnosed so quickly. I'm not typical in that regard. A lot of patients wait weeks, months, or even years for proper diagnosis. I was released from the hospital with very little information about this condition. I was simply directed to follow up with a gastroenterologist in about 6 weeks. I honestly thought I would go home, I would follow this diet plan, I would fix myself, and I would move on with my life. But that is not what happened. Once I got home, despite following all the guidelines, my symptoms worsened. The vomiting, which had all but ceased in the hospital, came back, and it was even worse than before. The pain rose to intolerable levels, but because I didn't want to return to the hospital, I persisted with the plan. And eventually, I became so weak that I honestly could not lift my head up off the couch. I thought at that point that I was going to die. I even wrote my family goodbye letters. They were very concerned and they begged me to do something. So I finally got up the nerve to call the gastroenterologist that I had been sort of assigned in the hospital. And he, being an especially compassionate doctor, agreed to see me on an emergency basis. He started me on a different antiemetic, Zofran, and ordered a prokinetic, domperidone. But because of FDA restrictions, it was weeks before I could begin the medication, domperidone. Those were without a doubt the longest weeks of my life. But once the medicine took effect, it took effect very quickly for me, less than a week. And it really made a difference. It lessened my nausea and my vomiting. And for the first time, I thought maybe I might survive. I credit domperidone with keeping me alive, but that is really what it's done. It's kept me alive. It has certainly been no cure, and the potential side effects and risks are worrisome, to say the least. As of today, every single day, all day long, I think about food. I see it, I smell it, I cook it, I serve it to my family, and I can't have it. I try to eat even small amounts of food, and I'm in agony. And because of the lack of nutrition, I'm weak and fatigued to levels I didn't think were possible. Some mornings, I don't have enough energy to get out of bed. I can barely concentrate and function enough to do everyday tasks. My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, has for much of her life seen me vomiting, screaming in pain, lying on the floor crying, and on the verge of passing out. Because of the weakness, nausea, and pain, I can no longer travel or get out of the house for much of anything, so I miss family gatherings. I'm unable to attend most of my daughter's choir performances, plays, athletic events, and everything else that's so important to her. I can't go out to eat or to a picnic or to a concert or do any of the other things I used to do without giving them a second thought. People don't understand how completely my life is affected by all of this. They don't realize how sick I am because I don't look that sick, but I am that sick. So when I'm asked, what do I want you to know about gastroparesis? When the thousands of people in my groups are asked, what do we want you to know about gastroparesis? We want you to know it is not a little stomach ache. We want you to understand the serious, debilitating, life-altering nature of this illness that impacts us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and even financially. Gastroparesis is physical agony beyond compare. It is days and nights spent on the bathroom floor, crying, pleading for someone to make the crippling pain, nausea, and vomiting stop. It is being too exhausted to focus, too drained to complete chores, and too weak to climb up the stairs to your bedroom. It is hungering for food, relief, a moment's peace. It's praying for an end to the never-ceasing torment while knowing in your heart that you're going to wake up and face it again tomorrow. It is frustration and anger. It's watching others eat, work, and play, and wondering why they were blessed with normalcy while you're fated to be ill. It's seeking independence, but knowing you must now rely on others to perform basic tasks that you no longer have the energy to complete yourself. It's seeking consistency, but realizing you are subject to whims of this cruel disease, and your symptoms can worsen in an instant, destroying your best laid plans. It is pushing yourself to the point of collapse and going without eating some days, even though you know you shouldn't do that, to stop the pain and nausea, and sometimes just to show this disease who's in control. It is endlessly being asked if you are okay, listening patiently to well-meaning yet misguided souls offer remedies and unsolicited advice, kindly overlooking their advice that you just need to eat, explaining the nature of chronic illness time and time again, and ceaselessly trying to convince those around you that you might never be okay again, not in the way they mean it. It's doing everything that you're supposed to do, following the diet, exercising, resting, taking your medications, keeping your medical appointments, and still not being healed. It is multiple levels of worry and fear. It's watching your bank account dwindle as you try to scrape together funds for expensive specialized nutrition, medications and treatments, endless doctor's appointments, ER visits, and hospital stays. It's checking the menu in advance and wondering how it will look when you order only a drink. It's searching for a bathroom as soon as you enter the building. It's carrying emesis bags and a change of clothes in case of accidents. It's reading the room to know how embarrassed you will be should an accident occur. It's checking your watch because after an hour or two, you might not be well enough to drive yourself home. It is worsening symptoms, comorbidities, and flares that grow longer and more frequent. It is scary low blood pressure, poor lab markers, shaky footsteps, and mental confusion. It's 500-calorie days, liquid diets, tube feedings, and TPN. It is ER trips and hospital stays that leave you wondering how long you could survive this. It is not knowing the cause and believing that doctors will never find it. It's watching your GP friends struggle and sometimes die and wondering if you might not be next. It's disappointment and lowered expectations. It's trying a food again and again, hoping against hope that this time you might be able to tolerate it, and then dealing with the pain of your mistake. It's going to doctor after doctor, trying treatment after treatment, eagerly anticipating relief, only to have your dreams dashed when it makes no difference. It is the look of dissatisfaction you see from your boss when you can't complete an assignment, from your friends when you call to cancel plans, and from your family when you can't do your fair share. It is being unable to meet the demands placed upon you by yourself and others, though you wish with all your heart you could, as you once did. It is watching your world shrink before your eyes as you constantly try to readjust. It is grief and loss. It is knowing that despite your best efforts, you won't make it to your job tomorrow. You'll miss your daughter's play later this week. The vacation you planned for next month will be put on hold, and you will be absent from the family Christmas gathering again this year because you're unable to function. It is yearning to share a meal with your family, just a simple meal, but being nauseated by the mere smell of food. It's lying on the sofa on your anniversary instead of spending the evening out, and then wondering why your spouse doesn't look at you quite the way he used to. It's gazing into your child's pleading eyes and for the millionth time saying, I can't. It is the loss of your career, your social life, your enjoyment of food, your spontaneity, your independence, your sense of security, your dignity, and your peace. It is desperately wanting your old life back, longing to have just one more carefree, symptom-free, normal days, like the ones you used to take for granted. We want our lives back. And you, the doctors, the researchers, are our best hope for that. We turn to you for solutions and for cures. Next slide, please. And in that regard, I would like to talk a little bit about what we would like to see in terms of research and clinical trials, and discuss some of the challenges we face when we participate in those, when we're looking to participate in those. First, we would like you to understand that we are not simply statistics. We're not numbers on a page, cases, or sterile, unaffected participants in the process. We are, above all else, human beings with hopes, dreams, and goals. We have families, loved ones, and friends that count on us. And we have a passion to live full, healthy, normal lives. We need your help in regaining what this illness has stolen from us. We long for cures above all else. We don't want to just treat this illness, the symptoms of this illness. We want to rid ourselves of it. We want to know the root causes and heal them so that we don't have to continue to just treat the symptoms. And we hope that new research will focus on that. Tubes and TPN may keep us alive, but those really can't be the goal. Shy of cures, we seek treatment which improve the quality of our lives, quality of lives as we define it, and not as defined by detached observers. We urge you to address the symptoms of our illness which matter most to us, the nausea, the vomiting, the pain, and so forth, and work toward alleviating those symptoms with treatments convenient to our lifestyles and appropriate for our needs. We seek to be included in the drug development process from the very beginning so that you can incorporate our wishes and our requirements into your entire design. This top-down approach really must change, and I think it is changing, so that patients have a say from the very beginning. Likewise, we want the opportunity to provide feedback all along the way and to be empowered to drive modifications in the process when appropriate. We also want you to hear and acknowledge our treatment expectations and honestly address how realistic you believe those are. We do not want false hope. We want you to know we're educated, knowledgeable, engaged in our own care, and willing to connect and share our experiences. It's sometimes very difficult for us to reveal personal information and discuss the most intimate details of our lives, but we're willing to do that when we know that our efforts will be met with respect, that they'll be valued, and that our concerns won't be dismissed or ignored. We seek assurances about how our information and experiences will be used to help others. And we want to know the outcomes of any studies and trials that you conduct and that we were involved in. In short, we want to know that if we share our personal experiences with you or participate in your research study, our involvement will be meaningful. We want to aid in the development of better treatments and cures for everyone affected with this illness, not just for ourselves. But that being said, there are some significant challenges we face when we're looking at clinical trials, especially in the gastroparesis community, I think. We're often willing to participate. We're often willing to participate in clinical trials, but we have a difficult time finding them sometimes. We don't always know where to search. And unfortunately, our doctors are sometimes not very well informed about opportunities in our area either. I would say that we especially see this with the members of our groups who live in more rural areas away from medical university settings. So getting this information into the hands of physicians who could pass it along to us would be quite valuable. We sometimes also have difficulty comprehending the lengthy and complex requirements for participation. We have false assumptions about the nature of trials sometimes, and we need clarity about what the costs and burdens will be, not just the financial burdens, but all the burdens that we will bear. Some patients sign consent forms and they don't really understand the fine print. We're not medical or legal experts, and clear, simple, brief language would be very helpful. We worry about travel demands, and that's especially true in this community. Frequent medical visits and lengthy commutes can be quite burdensome. Many of us are too fatigued or nauseated to easily travel. Some of us no longer drive. We don't have access to public transportation, and we have nobody who can transport us to appointments. So a lot of my group members have difficulty even getting to their regular medical appointments. So if a study requires significant travel, they sort of automatically rule themselves out of that study. Transportation assistance or virtual components might be helpful in this regard. We greatly fear what might happen to us if we abandon our current treatments, receive a placebo, or suffer harm from the test medication. A few of my group members have noted that they have had to discontinue a study for this very reason, or that they won't even consider it if they have to stop their current plan of treatment, current medications, because as inadequate as our current treatments might be, they're what's keeping us alive. And I mean that quite literally. We are one step away from the emergency room. If we stop those medications, maybe we can count on the study medication to help with our symptoms. But if we were one of the ones to receive a placebo, we can't even count on that. And we could be in crisis very quickly if we can't keep hydrated and get our nutrition in. So while we understand the needs of the researchers, this is a very difficult obstacle for us to overcome. In addition to that, many studies geared towards the gastroparesis community are not inclusive of those with additional medications, medical conditions. And again, understandably, from a research perspective, we realize the need for exclusion criteria. but it's another obstacle that's very difficult for us since many, and I would say most people that I see have at least one and likely several co-conditions. In one of our studies that we did in the group, this one with 598 respondents, a little more than half, 54%, indicated that they have more than one motility disorder. And that's just the motility disorders. So this is a significant obstacle for us. I would also note that frequently those with tube feedings, TPN, and those who have had surgeries such as the pyloroplasty or stimulator are excluded from trials. Many studies also ask only for participants whose gastroparesis was caused by diabetes. Those are all barriers to us joining studies and trials. I can't really say that I have solutions to all of these challenges, but I point them out because I think you should know sometimes why we hesitate to join trials and studies. I can tell you that you can help alleviate some of our concerns by simplifying your requirements, reducing our burdens, tailoring the trials to meet our immediate needs, assuring us of quality medical care throughout the process, emphasizing with our fears, and demonstrating compassion. We really seek, above all else, constructive quality engagement between patients and researchers. We value your willingness to include us in your studies. We value your research, and we want our input incorporated in it from the very beginning. It means so much to us just knowing that new research is being conducted. I remember a specific example when Vanda came out with their drug tradipitant, and they started running radio and television commercials about their studies. The members of my group were so excited just to see the word gastroparesis on their TV screen and hear it on their radio. They came into the groups and they posted clips of that commercial time and time again, and they were so eager to ask their doctor about the possibility of joining a study and whether it might be an appropriate option for them. So we have seen some success stories in our group among those who have joined trials. And when that happens, it's really life-changing. Our members share that success with us, and it gives us hope. And we want that above all else. We want that hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. That was very moving, and we're honored to have you come and talk to us today. Thank you. Thank you. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome again Mary Angela DeGrazzi-DeTucci, who is the president and also a patient and the founder of the Association of Gastrointestinal Motility Disorders. Hello, Mary Angela.
Hello there. And first of all, I want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity to partner with ResearchMatch. The work you're doing is just extraordinary and so greatly important and needed in order to move forward with research between the patients and the researchers. And I'm very excited about doing that. And thank you, Melissa, for your passion, your continued passion and dedication, not only to AGMD, but to all the gastroparesis community and those who have other motility disorders as well. You're a wonderful and extraordinary lady. So we're very grateful to have you as part of our organization.
Thank you.
That being said, I want to talk a little bit about our organization and some of the things that we provide. The association was incorporated in 1991 and is one of the oldest nonprofit organizations in existence that focuses on digestive motility diseases and disorders. Some of the highlights: in 1997, we became one of the first organizations to hold a symposium specifically on digestive motility disorders. And that featured a distinguished panel of experts, alongside patients and family members, friends, and members of the medical and scientific communities. And because of the success of this innovative format, bringing together this medical, scientific, and nutritional communities together with patients and their families, many organizations have followed AGMD's example. Our organization has hosted symposia over the years, partnering with the University of Kansas Medical Center to provide continuing education credit. These symposiums have received the prestigious endorsements of both the American College of Gastroenterology and the American Neurogastroenterology and Motility Society. In 2016, we held our first Digestive Motility Patient and Family Conference in Bedford, Massachusetts. We had world-renowned speakers in the medical and nutritional communities, along with patients and family members. That's the theme. And the conference marked our 25th anniversary in existence, and it was a tremendous success. We have a distinguished and renowned panel of medical and scientific and nutritional experts. These dedicated professionals provide AGMD with their time and expertise, but also their heart. And several have been with AGMD since its inception. We're now in our 30th year of humble service and helping patients and their families. AGMD continues to expand its research and programs. Where there is need, AGMD strives to meet that need as we provide more innovative and beneficial programs for all those impacted by digestive motility diseases and disorders. A little bit more about the resources. I think you can change the slide. Thank you. We have general information, and the general information can consist of anything from abbreviations, medical abbreviations, what they mean, an introduction to digestive motility disorders. So it gives patients a little bit of a background, especially if they're new to the medical world or new to having a GI motility disorder, such as gastroparesis. We have a lot of educational materials specific to various motility disorders, but also to other topics such as navigating the health system, depression, and living with chronic illness. We have created advocacy programs, and I have to say, they've been created and led by Melissa Adams Van Houten here, and she covers all aspects of advocacy. And this is a program that is continually to be developed as we speak. We have one program specifically for gastroparesis that it is very popular among our group, and that is Conversations with Dr. Kenneth Cook. He focuses every session, he comes every other month, and he does a program specifically on gastroparesis. We just had our Gastroparesis Awareness Program where he answered questions that were submitted by patients. So it was very, very well received, but he covers all sorts of topics related to that gastroparesis. And we have other featured guest speakers as well, and those include some from the medical community, pediatric as well as adult, I must add, and nutritional community. So we have dietitians that volunteer their time to speak. But along with that, we have our quarterly e-magazine, which is a compilation of articles by physicians, by dietitians. We have interviews of patients and medical community that are included. We also have stories written by patients and their families, and these are real life stories of what patients have gone through or what they're going through. We have educational articles, and there's a lot of inspiration in it. As far as, next slide, please, support, we hold online support community groups. We also have an audio support library on our website. And the audio support library is recordings of some of the support group meetings that we've had, We were having an in-person support group meeting in Massachusetts. With COVID, that has been put on hold for a while. We're hoping eventually it will get back. So we do most of our work online. The transition to online is pretty easy for us because we've been doing it for quite a while, as we are very much aware that a lot of patients are too sick to come. Or again, like Melissa said, they make a commitment and then suddenly they're not feeling well enough. So by doing both, it gives us the expansion of being able to reach out and accommodate many patients. Along with that, we have conferences, and those too have been put on hold, but we offer so much online. New slide, please. And we have many referrals. So patients are always asking, I have gastroparesis. I need a doctor. I live in California. I live in Massachusetts, wherever it may be. Do you have a doctor nearby? So we have produced this neurogastroenterology and motility specialist referral place within our website. It's a database. And within that, it not only divides it by state, but when you click on their link, you'll find that it has more details. So it has their contact information, but it says what their clinical interest is. So if somebody has gastroparesis, they may not necessarily want to go to a doctor who deals with achalasia. So that makes it a little bit more specified. The heartbreak is a lot of people, like Melissa had said, live in rural areas. And so they want a doctor nearby. And unfortunately, we can't offer that to the patients. So we try to, and so many patients are unable to travel. So we're doing the best we can to try to update that database as soon as we get information. We're also working on an international database because so many patients, for example, from Canada, we even have some from Australia or Italy and some of the other countries. We get requests from them. Can you give us the names? So along with the names, we also have a database consisting of neurogastroenterology and motility clinics and centers. And these are specialized areas where the doctors treat patients with motility disorders. And we have another database, which is growing. All of these are constantly moving. It's all in action because everything changes. A doctor may retire, so we have to update that. We may get a new doctor who reaches out and says, you know, can you add me to the database? So we have a section just for other related specialists. Some patients with lupus who want doctors who treat lupus, but also maybe gastroparesis. The same with scleroderma. Some patients have mesenteric artery syndrome and they also have gastroparesis. So this enables us to try to give as many resources as we possibly can in order to help patients with trying to find the help they need. We have, next slide, please, other resources as well. And that's, we have our website at www.agmdhope.org. We have an email. You can always email us at info@gimotility-agmdhope.org. Our phone number is area code 781-275-1300. We have to keep up with social media, so we have a Facebook page, and that is www.facebook.com/GI-motility. And we have a Twitter account, www.twitter.com, and then the /GI-motility. We have an Instagram account, which is www.instagram.com/AGMDHope. And we also have an AGMD Inspire community online, and that can be reached at www.inspire.com/AGMD AGMD-GI-motility. Our motto is serving as a beacon of hope to those in need. Our organization, like ResearchMatch and all the researchers, are beacons of hope for all of us, for more research, more treatments, and more cures. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary Angela and Melissa. We're really humbled and honored to hear your stories today and be able to give you a voice. We're funded in order to bring together people who are interested in research and want to help, and also to help the researchers. So I think we've learned a lot from you today. You know, we think a lot about how to make it easier for people to take part in studies. And Melissa, you articulated that so well, that, you know, it's often the travel, it's the burdens of just even having to go off your own medication in order to take part in the study, and what you're going to have to go through to be part of that study. So I appreciate you sharing that with us today. I'd also like to thank Leslie Bloom, who is my colleague and our communications director and our community outreach specialist. Leslie Bloom has now put on her camera. Hi, Leslie. We're so glad that you put this together for us today.
Thank you, Loretta. I also echo Loretta's sentiments and thanking Melissa and Mary Angela for today, for sharing your stories, for guiding us and helping us think through what it is that patients who are living with motility disorders, what they need and what they desire out of the clinical trial teams that may be working with you all on new treatments. So we have come to the top of the hour for our session today. We certainly want to thank you all for participating with us. This webinar will be available on YouTube, so we will be sharing it there. And we'll make sure that Mary Angela, some of the links that you shared, we can link in our YouTube, on our YouTube channel with this video. In addition to sharing this information, for those of you who are a part of the ResearchMatch community or who are now learning about it, we certainly want you to visit us at researchmatch.org to learn more if you have not become a volunteer at this time. It is our hope and desire that you will be matched with a study that fits your needs and that you too will be able to commit to making medical discovery happen. So I'm going to end there at this time, and thank you so much again for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.